What's up, it's Nez, and hello everyone, welcome back to The Letter. Last episode, it seems like Rose has gotten her own encounter with the ghost, but now, well, it's a new day, and it begins innocently enough. Tuesday morning arrives like any other day before it, bright and clear. Even though it comes with an extra helping of unusual October weather, I appreciate being able to catch a glimpse of the clear skies lately. After going through a bout of sickness last week, it does something to lift the mood of what would otherwise be a dreary morning. And despite being mostly a creature of habit, I wind up waking earlier than usual because of it. Still no earlier than Isabella, it appears. I've assumed she'll take a day off or two because of what happened to Miss Cooper, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Okay, it seems like we've fast-forwarded 1 week. The sound of the morning news drifts from her unit when I walk past on my way to the mailbox. Chances are around this hour she's already dressed and ready to go, probably just waiting for the next bus to arrive. I've tried following her example before, but I didn't think I'll be repeating that.
Really? How can anyone be up before the sun is up?
It's a habit she got from home, she said, instilled by the kind of life she grew up in. Like clockwork, it's always at 4 a.m., either to help with the chores or prepare her little siblings for school. It surprised me the first time, she just didn't look like someone who could. In the end, I've simply passed it off as one of the many things anyone will have to get used to around her. Not that I'll ever fully understand. I'm my parents' only child. We aren't well off, but so far I've lived a relatively easy life. Well, now we have the ghost to deal with. I didn't have to think about bills or food for the next day or paying for my siblings' tuition on top of my own, or supporting a sick father's medication. All I have to worry about were my grades, if it gained mom and dad's approval, or what we'd be having for dinner. When put next to hers, they all pale in comparison. They look less like problems and more like petty issues this way.
Petty issues?
But as unimportant as it sounds, sometimes its ugly head rears at the most inappropriate times. And sometimes they come through your mailbox in the form of a fancy-looking letter, pretty ribbons and all. Whoever sent this has spent silly money on the envelope alone. Verging on ridiculous, really. I can already imagine Isabella wrinkling her nose when she sees this, then she'll complain about unnecessary expenses and rich people problems. I'm almost afraid to touch it myself. As if simply brushing a hand against its crisp surface will be enough to put a crease on it, and it'll be a terrible slight to the sender. But as extravagant as I find this, it isn't really the first time I've received one. Most of the time, it's not even for me, so who am I to complain? Either way, no look of surprise crosses my face once I flip the envelope over and see my parents' name written in a neat script.
Nothing new then.
Their years in the academy naturally brought with it various connections, people from other fields, arts, science, business, politics, you name it. This one, though, gives off a much personal vibe. Letters like this usually come from old students, people who've grown fond of my parents and they in turn treat like children of their own. I've only met a few of them, most have moved on to become successful in their chosen careers, and little letters like this are their way of expressing gratitude. It's one thing mom and dad are proud of, rightfully so, and I'm happy for them. But there are times I wish they'll remember they have a daughter here. The real one. Not that it's of any importance now. It's not like they didn't raise me well and provided for me. They did. I wouldn't be where I am now if it weren't for their hard work. And like a dutiful child, I do everything I can to give back. Even if it's a small thing as letting them know they've got another mail waiting for them. The phone rings for a good minute before someone answers. Mom, her voice as warm as I remember.
Becca?
Hi, Mum. How's the conference going?
Well enough. Until your dad sprained his ankle.
Oh no, is it bad?
I'm alright. In case anyone in this family cares to listen, I'm alright. Very much alive, darling.
And there you have it. He'll be up and walking in a few weeks, don't worry. We're going to have to extend our stay here until it heals, though. Is something the matter?
Nothing big. Just that this mail arrived for you this morning.
We're not gonna mention that we almost died due to a ghost last week? A lie. Thankfully she doesn't notice. Although if I'm going to be honest, a small part of me yearns for her to do so and ask me about it, but I put down the idea almost as soon as it surfaces. I shouldn't make them fret, they're busy.
What does it say?
Raise your glasses, give cheers to the good times, blah blah.
Becca manners. That isn't how I taught you to read.
Sorry. You are cordially... it's an invitation, Mum, for a housewarming party. From, Hannah?
The name rings a bell, though at the moment I can't recall when or where I've heard it recently. It must be nothing too important if I didn't bother committing it to memory. There are a lot of Hannahs in the world, so who knows.
Hannah.
She also wrote you a note, Mum. It says you used to be her private tutor at the Evans mansion, and that She misses you and would love to see you two again.
Aw, Rebecca, you're jealous. It makes my heart clench to read another openly say those words to them, the same ones I want to tell them. I want to see you too. It's been years since we've been together as a family, and if there's one thing that hasn't changed from childhood, it's that Mum and Da are still busy with their respective careers. Out of the country, away on some meeting or symposium, sometimes for months on end. It only grew more frequent with the years until I'm old enough to live on my own. I'd like to think that's how I've become independent at such an early age. They've always praised me for that. At times, I wish they didn't.
Evans? Oh, I remember now. Honey, it's Hannah. Hannah Evans. Remember? Bright girl, 2 years older than Becca.
Didn't she get married a few years ago? 7 now, I think. But, they grow up so fast, these kids.
Yeah, she invited us to that too. Fonte de Medici. But we missed that one because you had to present your paper in Singapore.
We did send her a note after. Still a shame we couldn't attend, though. What is it about this time?
She sent another invite for a housewarming party. Becca, when is it?
This Friday, Mum.
Oh, that's too bad. We'd love to be there, but Da's not in a condition to go walking around.
Also, during the party, we have to go save Marianne.
I guess we'd have to decline again. I really miss that girl.
I could go in your place.
I let it slip without thinking. Personally, I've never been fond of gatherings, regardless of how simple people make it seem. But if there's one thing I hate hearing, that disappointed note in Mum's voice always ranks first. Whether it's directed at me or some other thing, doesn't matter.
Are you sure? Don't you have work this Friday?
The event will be in the evening, Mum. It shouldn't take anything away from my schedule. It's all right. The invite's for 2 people. I can bring someone with me so things don't get boring.
Let me guess, that'll be Ash.
I see. Maybe you can also invite Ashton?
Mum, that's a sure no from him. He hates attending parties. But I'll see what I can do. If not, I can always bring Isabella with me. You know her. She won't say no if there's food involved.
Okay, if it's not going to be a big problem for you, I don't see why not. We owe you this one, darling.
No problem, Mum. I'll even say hi to Hannah for you.
Please do. And let her know we'd love to see her once we're back in the city. Leave her our number or something.
I will.
But you know, the 2 of you would have become really good friends. Don't you remember? You met with her once. If my memory serves me right, you were 12 then?
Can we please get a picture of that? This too, I can't recall. It's probably one of those meetings where we only talked for a bit before going our ways. If she did leave an impression, I'm pretty sure I would have written about it somewhere, or at least recognized her name. As it is, the only few people I remember clearly from that time in my life is Ashton and Mandy. Okay, who the fuck is Mandy? To some extent. Mom must have sensed my confusion because she laughs.
Don't push yourself too hard, darling. Really? It felt like having 2 daughters back then. Sometimes I wish they didn't send her away to boarding school. But, well, you know how often that goes with them. Still, try talking to her while you're there.
Oh, we'll see. I'll let you know what happens after.
I'm looking forward to it, darling. Take care of yourself.
Will do. You too, Mum.
But we all know what happens during the party. Hannah sees the ghost, Rochelle barges in, claims that Luke is a cheating motherfucker, and we end up dancing with Hannah and Zach.
Bye. Tell Da to be careful next time.
She chuckles then. A hearty one, tender and always light on my ears. She may be a stern teacher, but this is the part of her I love the most. The sound of it still echoes even as our call comes to an abrupt end, bringing with it the memory of so many years ago. When life and responsibilities that accompany adulthood are things far from our minds. If given the chance, I'd love to go back to those. I don't dwell on it though, shaking it all away almost as soon as the memory forms a clear picture in my head. I've always wondered how Isabella can easily pretend everything's normal over a phone call, then bounce back to her usual self immediately after. I've seen her do it plenty of times. For me, it just drains whatever energy I have. And with a whole day of teaching still ahead of me, I can't afford to look exhausted in front of my students. Even for a wee bit, it's never a good example to set. So with another sigh, I put everything at the back of my mind and tread back to my room. The rest of my day awaits. 15 minutes later, I'm heading back out, dressed for the day, my car keys in hand. Ordinarily, I don't stop for anything, there's never a need to. That's the beauty of this apartment complex. It's quiet and everyone keeps to themselves. But will the ghosts keep to themselves? No useless platitudes in the morning, no need to wear a smile on your face lest other people are nosy enough to ask. Today, however, the morning broadcast still plays from Isabella's room. My brisk pace slows to a stop and a frown gradually forms in my face.
She hasn't left.
Of course, this isn't unusual. There are times when I've left earlier than she did, like last Friday before their open house. But those days are far and few between. It only happens in desirous circumstances, though the last part of that might be a bit of an exaggeration. However, with what's happened in the last few days, maybe today is the one. The death of a friend isn't something anyone can brush off, and for someone like Isabella's the kind who gets attached to people easily. With Zachary, Ashton, and Ida has been the case. I can't imagine what she might be going through right now, especially when the woman was someone she owed a lot, despite their training being brief. I've given her the space last night in deference, but perhaps today might be the proper time to check on her.
Oh, whatever. I've still got time anyway.
Isabella, are you there? With light steps, I move closer to her door, hand already poised to knock. Still, I don't do so until I hear her answer me.
Isabella? Belle? Are you in there?
No answer. After a second, I finally knock, lightly so I don't disturb her in case she's sleeping and has merely left the telly running last night. Never mind how she never lets that happen, ever. Waste of electricity and all.
I just want to check on you before I leave. Is that okay?
Isabella, are you still here? I remember we did go to work today.
Are you going to work today, Belle?
Still nothing.
I'm about to leave. If you want, I can drop you off.
Another round of knocking. Then I'm fishing out a copy of her key from my bag and unlocking the door. She lent it years ago after I complained about the mess and offered my help in cleaning up. I thought the gesture was completely unnecessary back then. After all, I could always knock. But she never did bother taking them from me, always returning it or turning away from the conversation whenever I insist. At one point, I've simply stopped trying to hand it back to her.
Isabella? I'm coming in, alright?
I hope the ghost isn't in there. Without warning for her answer, I push the door open and step inside. Her unit's still a mess. Instant noodle cups on the table, a pile of clothes on one side, paper strewn about everywhere, and an unkept bed among other things. This much is given, will always be a given. I've been here several times already and I still wonder how she can function like a human being with this place in this state. However, that's neither here nor there. Not sure what I'm expecting, and it's certainly not finding an empty flat. Granted, she could have left earlier, far earlier than usual. But she never ever leaves without making sure she's unplugged everything. That's something she doesn't forget to do. It doesn't help that her bathroom appears unused this morning. Another habit, and it can only mean she hasn't been here since. Last night? Perhaps even since the morning after Miss Cooper's death. Oh, okay, so this happens the night after we encountered the ghost of Isabella. So that means she's at Zach's right now. Either idea doesn't sit well with me, what with the news we've been hearing lately.
The authorities are still trying to find the cause of death for all the victims. Early investigation revealed most of them were employed under Briar Realty Corporation at the time of death. Meanwhile, BRC has refused to comment on this.
Gathering my wits, I immediately place a call to her mobile. It rings for a good minute, the sound of a comfort in itself, but when another minute rolls by without her answering, well, I'm not a woman prone to panicking. Sudden bouts of temper, maybe, but never panic, despite how I may sound when speaking. And when it ultimately goes straight to her voicemail, a sigh is the only thing I let out. The pause doesn't last long, though. In the next moment, my fingers are already moving across the screen in search of the two people who might be able to help. It's Ashton's number I find first and dial. Call it a habit, but even Isabella thinks he's dependable when the situation calls for it, despite how much they give each other grief. That already says a lot about him. There's Zachary, but around this hour, he's probably still sleeping. If he has freelance work, it's very likely he's gotten himself in bed. He's the last person I want to bother, if anything. The wait doesn't take long. Soon, a click, then Ashton's voice echoes through the receiver, rough and still heavy with sleep. He never did grow fond of mornings.
Becca? Christ, what time is it? What's up?
Not you, apparently.
Good one. Did you call us early just to make that joke? I'm going back to sleep.
No, Ash, hold on. This is important.
Becca, stakeout last night. Make this quick. I've still got a few hours before the chief bothers me.
Sorry, I'll let you go back to sleep after. It's just that... Wait, you were on a stakeout last night?
Did I say that? Shit. Forget I said that. Forget I said anything. Forget we had this conversation.
So, you have no idea?
So it was Rebecca that tipped him off.
About what? About what? I also have no idea why we're talking so early in the morning, so there's that.
No, will you stop... talking or whatever for a second. Belle didn't come home last night. She's gone.
Who?
Isabella!
Instead of an answer, a brief pause comes after, followed by something blunt and heavy hitting a hard surface and a string of rather colorful curses from him. The moment might have been one of the many things I'll keep to myself and remember fondly in the next few days if things aren't the way they are. When he picks up again, there's no trace of sleep left in his voice.
Say that again, from the top.
Isabella's gone, Ash. She didn't come home last night. Her flat's empty. She left her telly running. You know she doesn't do that at...
Okay, Becca, stop. Calm down first. You're starting to panic.
I'm not!
You are. Breathe. One person's not going to simply disappear like that. This is Isabella we're talking about. Did you try calling her?
What did you think is the first thing I did? She's not picking up. It went to her voicemail.
How about Zach? Did you check with him?
Not yet.
Not yet. I didn't want to bother him. You know he has trouble sleeping and all that.
Alright, I'll go ask Zach.
No, wait!
He ends the call before I can utter a single word of protest. But for the first time since entering this room, tension is gone from my shoulders and my breathing is eased. The bed creaks as I sit down on it with a sigh. The telly still blares the same uninteresting news and I'm surrounded by clutter. All the same, it feels strangely to be calm here without worry nagging at me. I'll have to apologize to Zachary later for sending Ashton his way this early, but for now relying on the latter for this isn't the wrong choice. It will never be. That's something I won't ever doubt in him, much like his promises. And true to his words, he calls back only a few minutes after the last one ended.
She's with Zach.
There we go.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. She could have at least sent a message last night.
What are you, her mother?
It's one thing to hear that from Isabella, but from Ashton?
I don't want to hear anything like that from you.
I'm serious. You've got to stop treating her like she's one of your students, Becca. You don't have to keep tabs on her every time. Last I checked, she's only 3 years younger than the two of us. That's almost a decade gap from those kids you're teaching, you know.
Says the person who keeps calling her scaredy cat.
That's not related. Anyway, I'll go check how she's doing. Don't stress yourself out. You go ahead to work.
Wait, you? Don't you have a precinct to be at? Whatever happened to not treating her like one of my students? Because if anyone's going to ask me, I think you're doing the same thing.
Didn't you say you had a chief to attend to?
Zach said it's an emergency. Something happened last night.
Emergency?
He didn't put in those exact same words, but it sounded like it.
Ash, what really happened? Is Isabella fine?
She's alright. She's safe. Zach let her stay the night after she... Look, okay. Z-Man wasn't clear about it, but let me handle this. I'll check on her. I'll bring her home.
It sounds like a lie if I've ever heard one. The sort where he omits things so people won't fret, and I'm not sure whether I should be happy he cares that much to do that. There shouldn't be a need for this between us, is there? We grew up together, didn't we? He knows I'm capable of at least hearing out the truth without it gnawing at me for the rest of the day. He knows me better than that. I know him better than that. Frankly, there's plenty of other things to say about this. But despite and after all the trouble he went through with how things are moving at the moment, only one thought occurs to me. I can handle it. Sorry for the trouble. Okay, fine, we can handle it. Why does he have to go such lengths for a person he only met 5 years ago? Fuck! I wish I can ask him that. I wish I can finally say it to his face and finally get a straight answer from him, instead of doing whatever this is we're doing. Instead of beating around the bush. Has the years changed us this much? Has adulthood changed us this much?
You've done enough, Ash. Let me take it from here.
Ashton is quiet for a while, but I can almost see the frown in him, hear the gears turning in his head.
Don't you have a class to teach today? Tuesdays are your busiest this school year, aren't they?
Yeah, but someone has to check on her. And I don't want to impose on you any further. I've already disturbed your sleep.
You're not imposing. Besides, I'm doing you a favor. I know you, Becca. You hate being late or missing a day of work for a very small thing. Leave this to me.
You said you're waiting for a call from the chief.
I'm dropping by the precinct anyway. There's some trouble I have to fix with those guys. It won't be completely out of the way.
Ashton,
I trail off, at the loss for words in the end. From the start, it's a losing battle. We may have been together for a long time, known each other far better than other people, but that doesn't mean we often see things eye to eye. Time and time again, it's a matter of agreeing to disagreeing. This is oft how the status quo is kept. Whenever it comes to this, I can only accept it begrudgingly.
Okay, whatever you want to do.
I'll let you know what happened afterwards, I promise.
Oh, you promise.
I'll call you later. You have a good day. Bye.
I admit the way he puts it isn't comforting enough. He can be blunt like that, so many unknown variables, so many words left unsaid. I wish he'd simply lay them all out in the open, because like this, I'm more inclined to think there's an exaggeration on the other's part. If it's from Zachary or Ashton, I don't know. In the end, all I can do is wait, go about my day and hope for the best. Before leaving, I spare Isabel's room one last glance, disturbingly quiet now without her in it. I'll get answers from her later. For now, my concerns are best left here. And now we're in school! It's the afternoon at St. Goretti High School. The rest of the day slips away in a blur. Despite my best efforts in keeping this morning's events from surfacing in my mind, it sticks. In a way, everything today feels like a reminder. Every conversation, regardless of how casual, every topic, no matter how mundane it is. I blame the news entirely for this. Recent happenings brought quite a few interesting stories to everyone's attention, mostly superstitious talk about death. And when locals talk about death here, anyone can sure as hell count on someone bringing up that mansion Isabel sold not a few weeks ago. Even my own students won't stop yapping about it. I think it's even worse than when it was put back up in the market. Now there are more stories. If this is the world reminding me of what matters, or simply because the atmosphere around this time of the year calls for it, I'd rather take the latter. At least then I can be sure people will forget about it in favor of another set of holidays after. Nevertheless, and this may be a painful thing to admit, but listening to them is a pleasant distraction while waiting for Ashton's call. I hope he didn't forget. The school's day is about to end soon.
No, that's got nothing with what I heard.
You always hear stuff. I'm not sure if half of them is even real.
No, really. Rowan knows about it. He used to be in the same class with them.
What the fuck? Again with Kylie's brother?
I can hear you from back here, you know.
Whatever, Rowan. Anyway, the story goes like this. There were 3 of them. They entered the mansion on a dare, and they were all never seen again.
Oh, we know exactly what happened to them. They were brutally murdered.
No one knows what happened to them. Up to this day. Scary shit, man.
Scary shit, man.
Cock and bull story. Calling it now.
No, you don't get it. Why don't you ask Miss Gales then? Better yet, why don't you go inside the place? I'm betting my allowance you can't do it.
Their talk immediately halts when I look up, all of them suddenly pretending to be engrossed in their current activity. Still, a word to put a stopper to this nonsense is needed. Creativity and imagination fostered by these stories is one thing, but reckless ideas should be corrected before anything potentially tragic comes from it.
Back to your worksheets, everyone. And I don't want to hear any talk of dares or going inside that mansion. It's private property now. You'd all better stay away from it before...
What was that? At the noise, a whole lot of them go silent. You can almost hear a pin drop. The look on their faces would have made for a funny picture, but that's irrelevant at the moment. If that is a student loitering around, someone's going to be in trouble.
I'll be back. If you're done, you can leave your worksheets on my desk. Keep the noise to a minimum while I'm gone, okay?
I can sense their eyes on me as I walk out the door. A muted kind of anticipation. A bit unnerving, but it's far from agreeable than the feeling of being watched I've been enduring these past few days. Okay, so the ghost is watching you, Rebecca. Class is still in session for most of the rooms. In a few hours, once the final bell rings, however, this place will be once again filled with busy chatter and footfalls, an everyday cycle in itself. But for the moment, I let the silence guide me, my ears focusing on whatever sounds there are or there will be, searching for that distinct clanging of metal. A good minute passes, and for the portion of it, only my steps echo through the halls. And another. I'm about to turn around when... The sound of it halts my footsteps. It's a little muffled and infrequent, but grows louder after each interval. With the hallway devoid of people, if I don't put a stop to it soon, it'll start to disturb the other classes still going on. Looking for it doesn't take long. All I do is follow the racket, and shortly I'm standing in front of a nondescript row of unoccupied lockers. And from inside one of them, sitting in the middle, comes the noise, annoyingly disruptive now that I'm facing it. Like someone's pounding on the metal door from inside, hoping to get out. Leaning forward, I try to get a glimpse through the horizontal slats of whatever's causing it. But in this light, only darkness greets me in another round of clanging. Louder than the previous one. More desperate. I've heard stories before, from other schools, from colleagues who had to deal with it once or twice. Although personally, I've never encountered one myself and I can only thank the heavens I haven't yet. But
If this is another kid some other student stuffed in a locker.
something tells me there's gonna be a freakout, but another part of me says there's gonna be a fake out. With a huff, I straighten up and study it briefly with a frown. Without delay, I reach for its handle end. At once, it stops, immediately replaced by the muffled sound of a mobile phone ringing. I give the door a few raps before taking my attention away. A second. Another. When nothing or no one responds, I finally avert my eyes and I pull out my mobile. Ashton's voice greets me on the other end of the line, oddly cheerful in light of this morning's matters. Or maybe because I'm expecting some grave or serious news from him. Instead, I get this.
Hey, Becca.
The fuck?
Well, you sound happy.
I do? My voice still sounds the same to me.
There are only two things I know of that could be the reason for that tone. Sweets, or he's gotten a good lead on his case. From the sound of it, I'm going to assume it's the former, since lately that case is all that's running in his head. If there's ever a third one, I've never heard of it. Yet. Oh no, it's called Isabella. It can only be one of the two.
Ignore that. How's Isabella?
Drove her home a few minutes ago. I think she's sleeping now. Sorry this took a while. Z-Man gave us the puppy eyes after we tried to leave. Had some food prepared for us, apparently. We didn't have the heart to say no.
That's alright. Is she okay now?
I'm not really sure. She didn't say anything to Zach, but she mentioned a plan to take a few days off from work. It was a passing comment before I left her, so I didn't get to ask.
Must be because of Rose's death.
Could be. It doesn't seem like it from Zach's story, though.
Kinda related, but nope, she was chased by a ghost.
He said she was shaking when she got there.
Shaking?
The word triggers a memory. From 3 days ago on the way home from her little treat after she sold the mansion, I didn't think much of it at that time, but I won't lie, it scared me. The terrified look on her face, how she sounded when she suddenly screamed.
Becca? Still there?
That's when we saw the ghost in the shop window.
Yeah, I just remembered something. Sorry, don't mind me.
Look, if you can talk to her, get the story out of her. That would be great. She wouldn't talk to Zach or me even when I tried. Maybe she'll speak up if it's you?
I'll give it a go, but I can't promise anything, okay? You know how stubborn she can get. But thanks for letting me know about this.
No problem. If anything comes up, just drop me a line, okay?
There's a short pause before he cuts the call from his end, and once again I'm alone with my thoughts. But rather than answers, all I got are questions, more of them on top of the other, as if the world isn't planning to give me a break anytime soon. But that's a problem I'll tackle later. Right now I've got students who need to be taught follies of eavesdropping, if the slightly open door and their smothered laughter from inside is an indication.
Alright, enough eavesdropping.
He's not our boyfriend.
All of you, back to your seats.
Is that your boyfriend, Miss Gales?
None of your business.
He totally is. A quick scuffle follows that comment. If there's a retort prepared at the tip of my tongue, I drop every pretense of letting it loose on them. There's no use arguing with teenagers sometimes, boisterous as they all are. They're still my kids though, rough around the edges maybe, but still my kids. Shaking my head, I head back to the classroom with a smile, but not before taking a glance at the locker again. It hasn't made a sound since.
Must be the wind.
Yeah, it was definitely the wind. So without another look, I leave it alone. Great.